Hey everyone, Spicy Toast Gaming here, and it's time for our Volibear guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe, and let's get into it. First though, just want to give a massive shout out to all of my awesome members going that extra mile supporting the channel. We're going to start with a brief overview of the champion, just so you know how they generally play, and if this is someone you want to invest your time as well as resources into. So up first, we have Titanic. The Volibear deck is built all around using Titanic units, which is any units that have 8 health or 8 power. So if you like being able to throw down some of the biggest units in the entire game, this is definitely the deck for you. Up next then, we have defensive deck and aggressive playstyle. So while the deck is built more defensively, you want to play it as aggressively as possible. You're really trying to get as many kills, and so sometimes you're fine with trading your own units as long as it means you're going to get more kills, because that speeds up your ramp. Speaking of which, we have improved ramp. So this is a deck where you are trying to work towards cheating out some of your big, strong units, but this deck does it better than really any other ramp deck in the game, and it's all built around slaying units, which is why we have that defensive deck and aggressive playstyle. Up next, we have free relics. From the star powers as well as Volibear's level up, all of your Titanic units essentially get Stalker's Blade for free. When you summon them, they strike the weakest enemy. So just getting that powerful effect on all of your big units is very nice. But then also, Volibear essentially has a built-in Troll King's Crown, which again is one of the best relics as far as consistency. So just getting that built into your kit is very, very nice. Then last up, we have Strong Finisher. Volibear is great for finishing out the game and actually helps you end games fairly quickly, despite the fact that this is a ramp deck. While leveling up all 3 of the new champions, I actually found I was able to end games fastest with Volibear, despite the fact that he is way more expensive than the other 2 champions, just because he is such a great way of closing out the game. Alright, that's it for this overview. Let's go hop in game and better explain some of the points we touched on here. Alright, in game now, as you see, we have Volibear at level 30 with 3 stars. Have spent a lot of time in leveling him up, and he is very enjoyable. For those star powers, for your first star power, when you slay a unit, summon a Sigil of the Storm, which you see that right here. This reduces down the cost of all of your Titanic allies by 1, and these can stack multiple times. Then when you play that Titanic ally, this landmark and all stacks of them get destroyed. So this is your great way to cheat out those big units. You have some cards that are able to summon these themselves, but as you see here, built in from your star powers, when you slay units, you are generating these. So your first star power is you're just summoning one of these when you slay a unit, but for your third star power, when you slay a unit, you summon 2 of them. Next up for your 2-star, we have Sky Splitter. +1 starting mana, and then when you summon a Titanic ally, it strikes the weakest enemy. As you see with Titanic right here, units with 8 attack or health. And so when you play one of those units, it strikes the weakest enemy. Essentially, they all have Stalker's Blade built into your kit, which is very, very strong. Now, this is slightly bugged at the moment. Don't worry, it's nothing as game-breaking as like Nasus. But what happens is when you summon one, it'll strike an enemy. Normally it's going to be killing it because it's striking the weakest enemy. But if you already have Sigils of the Storm on the board, it doesn't actually summon another Sigil. So it's a little bit annoying, since normally that means when you play a Titanic unit, it's going to give you 2 cost reduction towards the next one. So that is currently slightly bugged. Now, if you play a Titanic unit and you don't have any of the Sigils on the board, when it strikes a unit and kills them, it will actually summon those 2. This is something Riot has already acknowledged, so this will get fixed in the future. At the moment, this is just more of a slight inconvenience. It doesn't actually impact your game plan that much at the moment. These 2 star powers, though, work out very well together, really incentivizing you having that aggressive playstyle, trying to kill as many units as possible. And now this just says slay a unit, so even if you kill your own units, this also is going to count, really helping you get your Titanic units on the board very quickly. Let's go take a look at that starting deck now. So up first, we have Invocation of Thunder. So this is discounted down to a 1 cost because that Tear of the Goddess. Slow spell, drain 1 and summon a Sigil of the Storm. So you see that right here. This is really good because essentially you're playing this for free, because that 1 mana is immediately going into the sigil, so you're not really losing that mana at all. It's just getting invested until you play one of your Titanic units, and you're getting that draw one. Really great card. Up next, we have the Unscarred Reaver with that Tough. So 1 cost, 0/3, and then when I survive damage, grant me 3 power. This is a okay unit we could use for something a little bit more aggressive to replace this, but we do have some ways to trigger that damage manually, so overall this is a pretty decent unit, although a little bit too defensive for my taste. Next up then we have the Ice Veil Archer, 2 cost, 3/1, play Frostbite an enemy. Again, good defensive power for holding off until you can play some of your Titanic units. This unit also gets that barrier, which is very nice, letting you use this both aggressively or defensively, just making sure the unit should survive the round you play him. And you get that Entrancing Lure, strike, draw 1. This is actually a very strong upgrade, because Volibear can somewhat struggle with draw, so getting some extra draw on one of your cards really helps out a lot. Next up then we have Flash Freeze, another defensive spell, 3 cost, burst, Frostbite an enemy. That's all fine, but you get this Storm Calling item on it, which is amazing. Manifest a Titanic unit. So when you play this card, it'll give you a random selection of 3 Titanic units that you can add to your hand, so that is very nice. And then this summons 2 Sigils of the Storm. Again, the way I like to think about it, you're really paying only 1 mana for this, because the other 2 are then being put into the Sigils, so you're getting that mana back, essentially. Overall, a solid addition to your deck. Next up then we have Valhyr's Prophet. So a 3 cost, 3/4 with that Studded Leather. Then when I'm summoned, summon again another Sigil of the Storm. So as you see, even though we do have sigils baked in from our star powers, we do have a lot of cards that are able to summon more of these, really giving us some great amount of cost reduction for our massive units. Next then we have Avalanche, so 4 cost slow, deal 2 to all units with that Mighty Mustache to summon a Mighty Poro. This is great in a lot of different situations. For one, it's a way to trigger the damage on our Unscarred Reaver, giving them some more power, but then 2, there are many situations where the enemy will have a lot of different cheap units, or maybe even you have a lot of cheap units. You can just clear the board with this Avalanche. Quite often you can play this, and then you can get like 10 or more sigils just from playing this, and you can immediately play Volibear or any of your other Titanic units. This is overall an amazing card for this deck, and actually works out much better than I initially thought it would. Up next then we have the Babbling Bjerg, so 4 cost, 5/6 with that Phage, very nice addition. You also get Challenger on this, which is great. You really want ways to be able to kill enemy units, whether that is removal spells or getting some challenge or vulnerable. So having that Challenger baked in on one of your units, especially one of your stronger ones, great for being able to get those kills and then start scaling up your units. Also, when I'm summoned, draw a unit with 5 or more power. So essentially when you play this, you're either going to draw another Babbling Bjerg or one of your Titanic units, which is great. While this card is a little pricey, it does pretty much everything you need a card to do for this deck. Up next then we have the Tribalists. So 5 cost, 5/8, so this is Titanic. Attack, deal 1 to all battling units. Again, a great way to kill your own units or just trigger some damage on the Unscarred Reaver. Your 1-drop to give it a little bit more damage. This is a solid card, but one that you might want to cut if you have other Titanic units that you're adding to your deck, which you normally want to do throughout a run. This one is okay, and normally you can play it for quite cheap, but if you play this, it will consume any sigils you have, so be careful you don't play this and take up all your sigils that you're trying to save for one of your other Titanic units. Last up then, we have Volibear. So 9 cost, 10/10, play Relentless Storm 3 times. Each one targets a different random enemy or the enemy nexus if none. Now those Relentless Storms deal 4 damage to a unit. If it's dead or gone, deal 2 to the enemy nexus instead. So great way to just clear the board and deal good amounts of damage to the enemy nexus. Now his level up is very important. It's round end, you've dealt 50 or more damage. Now Volibear doesn't need to be on the board for you to have done the damage and complete the requirements for his level up. The issue though is he has to be on the board, and then at the end of that round, he will then level up, meaning he can't trigger his level up when you play him. So there's a lot of very strong relics that you might want to use for Volibear that are the level up relics, but this really negates that fact, so this does hurt you and your relic options a little bit. He is fairly easy to level up though, because when you play him, he's going to be striking a unit, so that's 10 damage right there. He's then going to be playing the Relentless Storm, which will be doing a mix between 6 and 12 damage. And then if you go with different relic builds such as Gatebreaker or Stalker's Blade, that damage can go up a lot higher. So normally just playing Volibear will complete at least half of his level up requirement. So he's normally fairly easy to level up. Now once he does level up, he gets Overwhelm, and now it's play or attack, play Relentless Storm 3 times. So now you have even more removal. Every time you're attacking, you're triggering those storms, and now other allies have Overwhelm. So again, this is essentially giving you that Troll King's Crown for free, giving all of your units that Overwhelm, really helping you close out the game. Now his champion spell, 8 cost slow, so you're not going to play this very often, but deal 4 to all units except Titanic allies. And then since this is the champion spell, it's creating a Volibear in your deck. This is a decent card and can help you get a lot of kills to then play another Titanic unit. But again, since it's an 8 cost, you're not going to be playing this very often. Overall, the deck is actually quite well put together, and I think it's actually one of the better decks for Path of Champions. Quite often, there's normally like a card or two that just doesn't make any sense at all. We don't really have that here. There's some cards that I think there could be better options, such as switching out the Unscarred Reaver for maybe something a bit more aggressive, but that is more of personal preference. There's nothing here, in my opinion, that's just, flat out wrong, whereas there's a lot of other decks you can point to in Path of Champions where there's selections that just don't make any logical sense, in my opinion. Let's take a look at the champion levels now, just so you know when you're going to be getting some of the upgrades listed here. So at level 2, the Unscarred Reaver gets that Chain Vest, so that's not too bad. This really helps this unit have a lot more survivability and lets it scale up a lot more from surviving that damage. The Ice Veil Archer gets that blocker, or gets that barrier at level 3, so great addition right there. Level 6, the Prophet gets the Studded Leather. Again, solid upgrade for one of your basic units. Then at level 9, the Tribeless gets the Great Club, getting that Overwhelm. This is fine, not really as impactful as most of the other ones, especially since you get that Overwhelm later from Volibear, so not that needed, but it's a decent upgrade. Next up, Avalanche gets that Mighty Mustache. This is great since normally Avalanche will be killing your own units, so having a unit be summoned after this, very nice for being able to block any potential enemy aggression. Next up at 15, Flash Freeze gets Storm Calling. Now this is a pretty big upgrade, giving you a lot more of those Sigils of the Storm, and the ability to generate more Titanic units, which is very, very strong. So this is one of your major upgrades right here. Next up then, at 18, Battling Bjerg gets that Phage, being able to go to a 5/6, really solid upgrade again. And then at 21, your Invocation of Thunder goes from a 3 cost to a 1 cost with that Tear of the Goddess. Again, one of the massive upgrades for your deck. Volibear is really a champion that scales with getting these upgrades. So while he feels maybe a little bit too slow in the beginning, just about all of his weaknesses do get covered from these champion level ups. Next at 24, Battling Bjerg then gets that Skirmisher's Saber, so that Challenger. And then the last upgrade, at least for adding items to your unit, the Ice Veil Archer gets that Entrancing Lure, so that draw 1 on strike. Again, mitigating one of your weaknesses of lack of draw. The deck itself, plus all of the upgrades, really are well crafted and really help mitigate any weaknesses that this deck would have. Really got to commend Riot for whoever made this deck. They actually did a very good job, and there's no obvious errors, which seems to be the case in most or a good amount of the decks in Path of Champions. Taking a look at relics now, I like to go for the Curator's Gatebreaker. So -1 power and then play I Strike the Enemy Nexus. Since you already have so much power, it going down by 1 isn't that big of an issue. This is great for closing out games and gives you a good amount of damage for your level up condition. Luden's Tempest, another one that I really enjoy going for. All of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. This is very strong for Volibear himself and your Relentless Storms. That makes them all do 5 damage to enemy units and 3 damage to the Nexus. That going off when you play him, but then when he levels up and attacks, that's again triggering 3 times. So I find it's a great way, again, to level up even more, but to also just clear the board and really chunk down that Nexus. And then I finished off with the Bounty Hunter's Renown, the best stat relic in the game. I have 1/1 for every 200 gold you have. Now, unlike a lot of the cheaper champions where you want to avoid shop upgrades and not be spending your money, you can still do that for Volibear, but I like to just still spend my money on shops, and normally this is still going to give you more stats than any other stat relic at the end of the day, especially for the final boss such as Aurelian Soul. For some other relics though, for your common relics, you might want to go with Lost Chapter. You do have some solid spells, so being able to refill your spell mana, not bad. Ravenous Hydra, it was okay. It can help for your level up. However, normally when you play him, if the Ravenous Hydra kills units, it doesn't actually spawn more of those sigils. It is a little bit bugged right now. Once they fix that, this will probably be another great addition to use, but for right now it didn't actually work as well as I would want. The Soul Spear, not a bad addition, giving that 1 power and fearsome. If you throw on your Gatebreaker for your first relic, which is what I did, and then you get some common relic slots later, I like throwing this on just for a little bit more stats, and then fearsome's not too bad as well. Starchild Staff and the Z-Drive Prototype are also some pretty great additions, either giving you some extra sustain if you end up taking too much damage during a run. This can really help with that, or the Z-Drive Prototype giving you a couple extra rerolls, letting you try to make sure you get the right powers you need to start your scaling. Both these are pretty solid and more passive upgrades. I don't think there's really any common relics that are too necessary or make too much of an impact for your Volibear, so really feel free to experiment and find what you personally like the best. For rare relics, Chemtech Duplicator, not something that I think is too necessary, but you're normally playing him around 5 mana, so normally shortly after you play him, you will hit that 6 mana, so all of your spells and skills get doubled. Normally not what I would want for this champion, but it is something to consider. Corrupted Star Fragment, not really that necessary again, since you already have so many stats, but if you just want to make the biggest, beefiest, scariest Volibear possible, this could be a pretty fun playstyle. Probably not optimal, but could be quite fun. Crown Guard and other level up relics, again remember, his level up condition happens at round end, so none of these really work. Hymn of Valor, this could be a fun addition, especially if you pair this with the Lost Chapter, so that you play Volibear, and then you're immediately creating this redoubled Valor, and then with the Lost Chapter, you're giving yourself the mana to spend it, doubling your stats, which since you already have so many stats, this would be pretty crazy. Could be quite a fun combo. Don't really think it's overly necessary since you're already so strong, but if you want a Volibear that can take down Aurelian Soul one-on-one, this is definitely a way to go for it. Blade Rack giving your allies Challenger, not too bad since having Challenger and removing enemy units is such a strong effect, especially to help play other Titanic units, so this one wouldn't be too bad to pick up. Stalker's Blade, when I'm summoned I strike the weakest enemy. I find that this is kind of overkill. Normally you're clearing the board already since you have Stalker's Blade built in from your star powers, and then you're playing these Relentless Storms. So I find that adding a Stalker's Blade really isn't needed, and normally will actually just be wasted. That's why I like the Gatebreaker. You always know you're going to hit the Nexus, where quite often with Stalker's Blade, there's just nothing for you to hit. So I don't like this as much, but I know some people really like playing it even with Volibear. Succubus Brand, 1/1, and when I kill a unit, summon a random husk. So this is a interesting approach. It gives you a little bit of stats, and then Volibear, you are actually killing quite a lot of units. Both when you play him, he's going to be striking a unit, and then also all those Relentless Storms going off. So you are able to kill a good amount of units if you wanted to summon a lot of husks and further buff up subsequent units. Again, probably not a optimal playstyle, but probably one that would just be fun to do. Scourge's Stash, Plunder, I cost 2 less, so if you want some even more cost reduction on your Volibear, this could be a solid option. Now, I kind of find that you can normally play Volibear fast enough, and you don't really need to rely on the Plunder effects, so it doesn't feel as necessary, but if you want to try to cheat him out as fast as possible, this can be a solid addition for you. Then let's finish up with Wriggle's Lantern. Round end, grant me impact twice if I'm in hand, max impact 10. Volibear will normally be sitting in your hand a couple of rounds, so you can get a good amount of impact from this. This can be good if you want to push just some more Nexus damage. Maybe you don't have a Gatebreaker, or maybe you just want to double down on the Nexus damage. this could be a solid addition for you. That's about it for the relics that I thought should be highlighted here, but definitely feel free to play around with a lot of different relic combinations and find what you think works best for you. Alright, let's go take a look at what powers and support champions you might want to use with Volibear. Taking a look at some powers now. So up first we have Triparian Might. When you summon a 5+ power ally, it strikes the weakest enemy. You're going to be summoning a lot of those, getting some free removal from your cards, stacking up some more Sigils of the Storm. This works out very, very well for you. Domination, Round Start Rally, great for trying to close out games early, but also putting pressure on the enemy. Again, trying to attack with your units, trying to get more kills, stacking up more of those Sigils. The best defense, allies have attack, grow my health to match my power. Most of your units are going to be getting large large damage pools or attack pools. So being able to continually attack, essentially healing themselves for a large amount, giving you a lot more survivability in your units, and helping them just stay on the battlefield longer. Again, getting more kills, stacking up more Sigils. Next up, we have Elemental Winds. Your spells and skills deal 2 extra damage. So this is great for both your Avalanche, for it to be able to clear and kill more units, again, stacking more Sigils, but also for your Volibear. His effect, when you play him, those storms, making those all hit harder, great for clearing out more enemy units and for damaging the enemy nexus even more. Sorcery, Round Start, refill your spell mana. You do have some pretty solid spells, so having the freedom to play those when you need to, very solid right there. Then Slow But Steady, when you play a slow spell, copy it on the same targets. You do have 2 powerful slow spells in your kit. The Invocation of Thunder, the draw 1 and summon a sigil, so that going off twice is great. But then also you have the Avalanche, having that go off twice really will help you clear the enemy board. And also summon 2 Poros, really solid addition right there. Last up then, Endurance, when an ally survives damage, granted 1/1. Buffing up your units, but also you have a lot of ways to trigger damage on your own units, so both Avalanche and then also the Tribalist. Both these effects can go off and actually buff up your units, which can be a great addition. Titanic Wake, another one of the new powers they added, so when you summon a unit with 8 attack, health, or cost, grant it 8/8. So normally you're going to be summoning units that already have massive stat pools, and then this is making them even larger. A bit of a win more power, but it is a lot of fun. Enfeebling Strike then, when you damage an enemy, reduce its power by the damage dealt. Pretty much the best defensive power in the game, and it pairs very well with your use of Avalanche, being able to hit the entire enemy board, and then if you don't kill anything, you're at least reducing down their power. Really a great addition to your lineup of powers. Next then, let's take a look at support champions. Now as always, this isn't an exhaustive list, but this is just some things you might want to bear in mind when looking at support champions. So up first we have removal. Now this could be from spells, or it could be having units that have Challenger, any sort of removal you want to be looking for because you want to be taking out as many enemy targets as possible. Then next up we have Darken. So this is very good for 2 reasons. 1, the equipment is great to be able to put on your units, but then 2, most of the Darken cards can also count as Titanic units. So being able to get that cost reduction and then play their more powerful forms, really great for you, and having that flexibility of being able to play it in the early game, but then being able to play it again in the late game as a strong unit is very good for you. So for some specific champions you might want to look for, Fiora, a lot of Challenger units, great for taking out enemy targets. Swain, a lot of removal spells, great for, again, killing enemy targets. Swain also is close to getting that Titanic, so with some items it'd probably be very easy to get him to that point. Next up then, Kindred, again, great for taking out enemy targets or even killing your own units, which again will trigger those sigils from your star powers. And then last up we have Aatrox, solid Darken champion, close to being able to play him as a Titanic, but then he'll also come with those Darken equipment that you can play both as equipment or as very solid units. Next up, here are some cards you might want to look out for. Normally, while you're playing, you do want to pick up some Titanic cards. So, Crown Guard here on the left, solid card to pick up. You know, get that rally. You can often use this to close out the game. Mega T, really solid champion here. You can have this on your board, and it will constantly just transform the strongest enemy unit into a 3/3, and then silence it. I've used this to last way longer than I should have against Aurelion Sol and actually come away with the win. really solid card and probably one of the best cards for going up against Aurelion Sol. The Wrathful Rider, this is a very solid card because it's a 5 cost that's also a Titanic unit. So normally you can play this for very cheap, and if you get some good items on it, it can be a great addition to your arsenal. Commander Liedros, being able to play this and just nuke the enemy nexus by half is really awesome. And again, remember, all of these cards, you're going to be playing them for a reduced cost. And then last up, we have the Hearthguard. Now here, I just wanted to show a unit that normally isn't Titanic, but then if you get lucky with some upgrades, this will then count as a Titanic unit. So this is something you want to look out for, not necessarily this card specifically, but any card that normally wouldn't be Titanic, but because of upgrades has reached that point, and so they'll count towards getting that cost reduction for your sigils, and will also get that strike effect from your second star power. Next up, we have some tips and tricks. Now these are mostly things I've already touched on in the video, but just want to reiterate them. First up, don't be afraid to add Titanic units. So normally throughout your run, you will be shown Titanic units you could add to your deck. The game tries to show you units that you might want. This happens for every champion, but since your deck built around Titanic units, you'll often be shown these units as ones to pick up either in the shop or as like after combat rewards. Now obviously you don't want your whole deck to be Titanic units, but normally grabbing 1 to 2 isn't a bad idea. Next up then, killing your own units counts towards your star power. So again, don't be afraid to kill your own units. Obviously you still want units to be able to block or attack, but trading your units to kill enemy units or just killing your own units outright is a great way to summon a lot of sigils and get your Titanic units on the board earlier. And then last up, Black Cleaver can make units Titanic. So when you play a unit that has Black Cleaver, it doubles their stats. If that gets them to the point where they are then Titanic, they won't consume the sigils because you already played them for the full cost, but they'll then normally get that strike effect off. So even though when you're playing them, their stats themselves don't reach that Titanic yet, once the Black Cleaver activates, they will get that effect and get that free strike off. So this is something really nice and just to be mindful of when you're playing your games. All right, let's finish up with some rankings and some of the pros and cons. So I think before level 20, he is around a B ranking, solid champion, but some of your most powerful upgrades you are getting after level 20. And so I think once you are past level 20, especially once you get those upgrades, he moves up into the A category. For the regional ranking for Freljord, he is definitely by far the best champion Freljord has. Freljord has really struggled for a long time, and so it's great to see that we're finally getting a strong champion for that region. For some of the pros, he has the best ramp in the game. I think what they've done here with the sigils and the fact that you have so many ways to summon them really makes this the best ramp deck that we have access to. Also, very strong finisher. Volibear himself is able to do tons of damage to the enemy nexus and really help you close out games. And then you have a varied game plan. So what I mean by this is when you play him, every single game is going to feel fairly different than the last one. Some of the champions like Jinx or Diana, a lot of their games can be very strong but end up playing the exact same every single time. Here you normally are getting different Titanic units every run, and so that's really changing how you're playing, and so every game feels fairly different to the game you played before, which is really nice and keeps it from going too stale. So some cons, you are upgrade reliant, you get a lot of great upgrades from leveling up, but if you're playing him without leveling up or playing him at those lower levels, he will definitely feel a bit weaker. Like we talked about before, his second star power is currently bugged. Riot has already addressed it, so they should be working on a fix for that. And then your ramp can be a bit inconsistent. Since it's all about summoning those sigils, if you're not able to kill enemy units, you won't be able to get those Titanic units on the board as quickly. So while you still have ways to summon those sigils without killing enemy units, that is going to be the main way you're doing it. So against some matchups though, your ramp is going to be a lot slower. I don't think it's too bad, but definitely something to be mindful of. All right, that's it for the Volibear guide. Again, massive shout out to all my members. If you guys enjoyed the video, definitely like and subscribe, and I hope you all have a great day.